Welcome back to the revival, NA production guy right there, of 323 Weekly. It's been a while. Have finally found a co-host to join. Liquid, thank you for joining. Go ahead and introduce yourself, Liquid.
No problem. I've been following your work for a while, and I watch as much HGC as possible when this opportunity arose. I had to jump on it. I love talking HGC. I can't get enough of it, so why not?
Well, yeah, I kind of obsess over it because I don't have a life or a girlfriend or a family or social skills. So it's really just a nice outlet for me, and I definitely enjoy it.
My wife and kids just think I'm crazy because all I do is watch HGC. So,
well, with that, HGC starts up again tomorrow, but we're going to start with a recap of the action from last week. So jumping into the first series, Gale Force versus Team 8 in Game 2, Infernal Shrines, and Team 8 managed to turn around, get a kill on Tyrael so they can push core, right? Uh-oh, their own core has not 1, not 2, not 3, but 6 catapults going to town. Gale Force on the chase, not going to let Team 8 back. Look at how persistent they are. They know that it's an outnumbered situation, and if Team 8 turns around, they'll die, but Gale Force knows those catapults are doing work. The core is at 57. The core is dropping. The minion wave spawns briefly abated. 45 down. Next volley comes in. 36. Next volley comes in. 27. Glaurung barely getting back in time, but that's all Gale Force needed. That 20% was easy to take down when they pushed the core later. Jumping in to game number 3, this is the fight that won Gale Force the series. Gale Force just completely out-macroed Team 8 in all 3 games, but it shined the brightest here as Zagara globals in to poke down Anub'arak, and then watch, Zagara is going to, in the middle of this fight after Glaurung disappears, gonna just go ahead and burrow out and go straight up to top. Equinox somehow staying alive, and here comes Akaface with the sound barrier to keep him alive so they can get the trades. Crowan already on the core up in the top left. Global's out. Really just an impressive series by Gale Force. We will definitely be talking about that one. Friday nightcap, this one was Naventic B-Step. Naventic had been struggling. Easy win for B-Step, right? Well, here we are in game number 1. Final push, Tomb of the Spider Queen, and 2 Web Weavers basically on the core. iDream getting chased down by Zuna, gonna get the kill. And just so much damage coming out. Malv has the ice block to try to stay. Kenma gets picked off in the backside there, not a surprise. B-Step, though, does lose 3 members and wins the game with the push. Not a great series from B-Step, heading into game number 3, already down 2-0. King Caffeine trying to sell out for the kill on Beacon. Faustad flies in, but the Twilight Dream with the root counter. Faustad never even lands, and he's dead. And the chase is on. Big impact. Really doing good things on Lunara in this series. Gonna proc the Divine Shield, but still, APM not gonna be able to get out of this one. Naventic wins 3-0. 3-0. So, really just, one series was just surprising at how lopsided it is. One series was also surprising how lopsided it was in the opposite direction. But jumping into it now, just kind of looking at what happened in those series. Obviously, you know, the big storyline just has to be 2 3-0s, but Gale Force really looked dominant in that series with Team 8.
No, they did. They absolutely did. I think it was interesting. I wrote my notes down Friday night, and I said, Gale Force has found its form. They struggled a little bit pre-Western Clash, where they weren't always hitting the games the way they needed to. And that Friday night performance really looked like that was the Gale Force I expected to see, just rolling right through Team 8.
Yeah, so there's a fun little note for me. So I am on a team in Chair League. We're not very good because I'm not very good. But we were talking about comps, and one of my teammates suggested this heavy push comp that involved a Zagara and a Faustad just constantly globaling, to which I said, well, yeah, but eventually we're going to have to win a team fight to win the game. Apparently not. Gale Force said, nah, we're just going to keep pushing you to death. And then eventually you'll get angry, you'll make a mistake, and we'll take advantage of it and global in and kill you, 5v3, which is what they did. Gale Force wasn't winning team fights in that series. I mean, when you look, and so when we go to Tempo Storm later, I'm actually going to say Tempo Storm, I think, looked better just because they dominated every aspect of the game nearly. Gale Force was not winning team fights regularly, but they also were playing such insane style that they never had to win team fights. They never looked out of control of any game, even after they would lose a team fight badly. It was just incredibly impressive. But then I guess we have to jump to the bottom line. What happened?
I think B-Step woke up on the wrong side of the bed. That's how I want to describe it. Because when we talk about Naventic playing later in the week, they played like Naventic. And I think looking back at that game Friday...
For clarity... Phase 1, Part 1 Naventic. Because we're not talking last fall Naventic by any means.
You're correct. We're talking HGC Naventic, right? Mm-hmm. They've played like HGC Naventic. B-Step just, I don't know what happened. I watched that game back. I watched the whole series back again, and I continue to be confused by, I don't know if they just weren't synergizing, that break like messed them up and none of them were on the same page or what. But something clearly happened to B-Step there. Mm-hmm. So I don't think it's so much Naventic won that series as B-Step lost that series.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree. I tried to look back, and I tried to... With each highlight, I usually, when I can, for the sake of time, I try to find something positive for Team A and something positive for Team B. Not as able to do that this week with the number of 3-0s, but especially when I looked at B-Step, I couldn't find anything worth showing. Right. It's not like they lost 3 games, that they were competitive in. I mean, on that Tomb of the Spider Queen game, there were 6 structures up for Naventic at the end of the game. On Tomb of the Spider Queen. We're going to have to talk more about this later because, I think Naventic played very well in that series, and I think if they played that well against No Tomorrow, the series would at least not have gone as strongly in favor of No Tomorrow. I do think they just played better, and I'm not sure if there's any reason for that. But B-Step just, when we get to the superlatives and the worst team of the week, I think we both agree that B-Step is on there or at least near there.
Yes.
Anyway, so with that, we're going to jump in to Saturday's game. So this featured Superstars and Team Freedom. Heading in, Superstars was number 5 in the standings, Superstars was number 5, and Team Freedom was 6, 7. They were 6th at the time, although I think 1 game ahead of Naventic. So this was a big game with impact for the Crucible, and heading into that, we're gonna see, here on Towers of Doom, always a pretty good comfort pick for Superstars, but actually a great chase by Arthas, getting the root. Managing to kill Faye. Superstars was up 15-1 at one point in this game, but with Srey going down, with Faye going down, they actually drop this set, and heading into the final fight, what was a 15-1 game, now a 1-7 game, and actually there's going to be sappers on the top to make it 1-4, as Team Freedom really managed to come back into this one. And Arthas is just seemingly impossible to kill, especially the Abathur Arthas being able to just go onto the back line, not even have to worry about keeping himself alive. That Abathur Arthas did a lot of work. Anubarak being able to burrow out and keep their hopes alive. What's worth noting here, though, is Srey coming in onto the bottom has to overextend trying to interrupt Zugrug, and eventually dies, so now it's a 4v4, except it's an Abathur, so really kind of a 4.5v4. And Team Freedom does have to back off here, but they're going to come back in. They're going to channel this shine, and they're going to win. Just the health bars are so low. Iacona doing everything he can to keep people up, but the poke damage really worked out well, but it was just that Abathur Lunara. Lunara got a lot of play this weekend.
Yeah, she absolutely did.
Yeah, so here's the highlight, actually, where I meant to start it. Watch the burrow-in from Zugrug right here. Boom, 2 for 1. And then they're going to turn around, they're going to finish off Zarya. Really, really good job by Team Freedom just sustaining out that fight and letting their poke do the work. So they do actually even the series up at 2-2 off of that. Heading into Game 5 now. Right now, Superstars with the 5v4 advantage, they're going to just channel both shrines while Team Freedom takes their bruisers. Not going to be a problem, or is there? Zarya starts to move in, and Goku just burrows in to the bruiser camp, going ham. He is going to drop, or is he? Insomnia goes down, Goku self-sustains, there's the Lucio sound barrier, Dansky's going to get absolutely annihilated, Muradin just charging in, making sure they get the kill on Zugrug. What a great bruiser camp invade, and so unexpected, because like, oh, well, we have both shrines, we can just sit on these. Nah, let's just burrow in and try to make something happen. Superstars. Wins a close one, but they do win. Second set, Tempo Storm versus No Tomorrow. I think most people expected this to be somewhat one-sided. Jason gonna fly over the top, trying to go for the gust. Does manage to get it, but there's really no follow-up. He gusts the enemy team into one place, and then they say, okay, now that we're here, let's just kill your entire team. Tempo Storm gonna be able to just walk up to the core with the Dragon Knight and take it here. That gust didn't work, but there was one gust in that series that absolutely did work. I'm gonna call this one the Gusty Dream, as Kathon Luck says, oh hey, guys, let's fight right now. Gust, Twilight Dream, 3-man, turnaround. Zarya's somehow going to stay alive. VP, though, great isolation. 7-sided strike, gets protected, but Varian is going to go down. And off of this, Tempo Storm, despite actually being down entering this fight 3-10 on Towers of Doom, are going to come out with a 5-man wipe, and they're going to end the game off of this. So, with that, I apologize that the Superstars highlight, I accidentally linked the wrong time. It was the start of the fight, and I just really wanted to show that an Uberak double kill. But, yeah, just... Oops, I accidentally refreshed. I was going to pull up... I'm pulling up the scores. They're just, you know, technical difficulties and a production value. So, Team Freedom loses 2-3 to Superstars, so Superstars going to continue to distance themselves from the Crucible. They're not completely safe, but they're in good position. Tempo Storm beating up on No Tomorrow. 2 of the games were what we expected. The Towers of Doom, No Tomorrow did put up a fight, and they did look better. So, you know, the No Tomorrow team that we're seeing right now does look a lot better, I think, than the first leg.
Yes, I would agree. I also think it's interesting. 2 of the best fights that we saw in the series is on Saturday were both on Towers of Doom. And I love playing on that game, and I love casting that game for one specific reason. The comeback is real. Mm-hmm. So if you can survive, and we saw both teams that actually ended up winning those games on Saturday were both down towards the middle of the game. And then just they hit their power spike, they started doing what needed to be done, and they dominated the game from there. And that's why I love Towers of Doom. I think these 2 games in particular illustrate why that works so well on that map.
Yeah, I'm still somewhat surprised to see Superstars struggle with Team Freedom on that map. Superstars has long been forcing Towers of Doom onto their opponent. And I think losing that game is somewhat concerning because it is one of their maps that they're better on. I mean, yeah, even though Superstars is good on that map, you know, they still lose that map to teams like Gale Force and Tempo Storm. But they managed to beat B-Step on that map, I believe, as well. So
yes. Well, and an interesting fact, so Superstars, I think, is recognizing that they need some help, not just in, like, they need help getting better. So they just now today started looking for an analyst to go through their post games, go through their replays, and you know, try to take them to that next level. We saw Team Liquid do that 6 months ago, and we saw almost an improvement 3 to 4 weeks later, just based on their analysis, having an analyst look at everything that was going on for them.
Well, you know who hired a coach not that long ago? Team Dignitas.
Yes,
they brought in
Dunk
Train and worked out decently in the Western Clash. They won it, so you can't. You know, there's something to be said about you really need a third unbiased party to just look and observe and watch. Because if you watch the game yourself, you are watching it through your own eyes. You're biased by what you were thinking at that moment.
Right.
And what you were thinking at that moment may have just been fucking wrong. I mean, that's, you know, and so having the humility to bring in a third voice, even if you know that you're probably a better player individually, just having another idea out there, even if it's not yours, might lead to better play.
I think it does. I mean, there's a reason that Korean and Chinese teams all have coaches and analysts.
Yeah. Well, what Chinese teams that last more than 3 weeks, anyways?
Well, yeah, that's a fair point.
With that, going to jump into now Sunday games. First series was between Naventic and No Tomorrow, and we're going to jump straight into the mind games here. No Tomorrow going to try to sneak the boss. Naventic goes in, baits out the core, so Morales jumps in her medevac, and No Tomorrow is going to jump in with her, right? Well, not precisely. Naventic, or No Tomorrow, keeping Vala and Muradin up, but Naventic, seeing there's only 3, decides to go for the core rush, and No Tomorrow now on the defense. Vala and Muradin gonna be, but head start as Naventic just starts to burn the core, but in comes Jason with the strafe. Just watch those health bars drop. Tomster's disappeared before the sound barrier can get off. Big E and Kenma are also picked off there. Trying to keep it alive. Zuna's going to go down next. Watch what Jason does here. You shall not pass with the, or not Jason, sorry, Airho. With the body blocks, preventing Joanna from getting that last bit of damage on the core. 3%. I didn't even know Kalaris casted North American games. Jumping over to game number 2, we are going to see No Tomorrow. Their comp was much maligned by Dread heading into this game, right up until a moment up here. No Tomorrow going to go ahead and invade this Bruiser camp right about now. CC Train, Chugga Chugga, Choo Choo, Big Impact, knocked over. The CC Train from that comp was very legit, and that's not the last we've seen of it. Pushing late in the game, a whole 8 minutes and 45 seconds in, such a late game, we are going to see Big Impact trying to defend, but there's the root, there's the telekinesis, there's the Stormbolt. Chugga Chugga Choo Choo, the CC Train's in town. Wow, that was just such a good combo. No Tomorrow beats Naventic 3-1, and this was a sub-10-minute game on Battlefield of Eternity. Jumping in, Team 8 Tempo Storm. Huge match. This was between what was previously the first and second place ranked teams in North America. Obviously, the Western Clash Series was big. Coming in, we're going to see Cattle and Fury on the back line, trying to force an engagement. Void Prism comes out probably a bit early, not able to secure a kill on Arthas. They're going to try to lock down Nazebo. Ice Block in the Gust, going to save him. Falling Sword trying to enable the re-engage as Glaurung going to go back in. But Just Sting just gets absolutely demolished from this damage. And Yoda, a little bit too out front that time. There's no Ice Block. The Stormbolt and the Kael'thas are going to get the kill. Ancestral comes out to keep Cat alive. There, Malfurion goes down. Glaurung tries to dive onto Cawthon Luck. Not able to get the kill. The chase is on. And that's a 3-man wipe as Tempo Storm wins game 1. That was a very long and competitive game. What was a little bit less long and competitive was game 2, and then here in game 3, Glaurung finding some Abathur Mites, just finding them for his team. But Psalm smells blood in the water. Cue the Jaws theme music as Psalm is going right after Glaurung. Camera's going to cut away due to a fight down here, but don't worry. Psalm's going to get the finish with the Abba hat. You know what's better than 1 pickoff? How about 2? Once again, cue up the Jaws theme music. Prismat just rotating the lane, and there's the blow-up combo. That is 1 dead Dahaka. You know what's better than 2 pickoffs? How about lucky number 3? And this one may have been the best. As Psalm finding Just Sting here. And now we're going to see, so Dahaka sees Abba burrow top. Remember, Valera was just in middle. Cawthon, with the jukes, misses the tongue. Dahaka's like, oh well, I'll just go back and clear this wave, and uh-oh. Is that a shimmer? Psalm rotates all the way up from the bottom jungle and picks off Prismat on the retreat after he goes for Abathur. Jebaited. So, with that, Tempo Storm goes on to win 3-0. And that, somewhat surprising to see Teammate come out struggling this week. They go 0-6 in total. When I said earlier that Tempo Storm looked better than Teammate in their games, the one exception was Game 1. Dragonshire was a really close, really back-and-forth game. And then it kind of got a little bit out of hand. We saw a lot of pickoffs in that Towers of Doom game. I don't know. Like, Teammate just did not look on point this weekend, though.
I think there was a mixture of two things happening. I think Teammate looked off their game this weekend, 100%. I was surprised they were playing as bad as they were. I'm not the greatest player in the world. I know that, but I can recognize the difference in the skill level or the level of their play, and they were not on point like they usually are. But I think more importantly, Tempo Storm almost feels like they've found their stride in NA.
Mm-hmm.
So now it's like, okay, now you guys need to plan for your next step. Keep playing the way you're playing in NA, but you need to be ready to compete at the next level because that's
right.
Coming,
They've struggled internationally just regularly.
Right.
I mean, go back to the Gold Cup World Championship, and I think they went like something like 10-2 while they were 2-10 while they were there. Like it was just.
Right.
I don't even think they. I think they won 2 games and they lost at least 10.
Exactly, and I worry about that. Right, your form is great right now in NA, but what's going to happen when you get out of NA and go international? That's what Tempo Storm needs to be worried about. I think the other important point we learned here is never let Tempo Storm have Abba Valera.
Yeah,
because bad things will happen.
Soam was really dangerous on that. Now it is worth noting that Teammate, they don't scrim the teams they're playing the week of. So Teammate couldn't scrim Gale Force and Tempo Storm. It's also worth noting, and I don't know if this was intentional, but there's something, I know Naventic had to play Gale Force and Tempo Storm in the same week. Team Freedom had to play Gale Force and Tempo Storm in the same week. And now we're seeing Teammate have to play them. Teammate actually did the worst of all of those against the two, but Gale Force and Tempo Storm I think are a lot better now than they were in the first leg.
Yes.
I'm not sure if it's just random scheduling and it turned out that way. It seems like there's some type of Swiss pairing going on in terms of how they ordered the schedule. And I think that played to the detriment of Teammate. I also think, and I don't know how they arranged the scheduling, so criticizing it may just be a moot point, but there were 3 games you really had to watch for to determine who was going to be first place in this leg. Because especially with B-Step struggling, there were, it's going to be between the top 3. So you look at Tempo Storm Teammate, Gale Force Teammate, and Tempo Storm Gale Force. 2 of those are already done. And we're just in week 6. And yeah, we do get the last game, Tempo Storm Gale Force in week 9. But it just makes the 2 intermediate weeks really have, unless Gale Force does one of their choke jobs that they did against Team Freedom, and I say that as a big fan, but that was not a good series for them unless they stumble, because I don't think Tempo Storm will, I don't think Gale Force will either, but they could. Then week 9 is effectively going to decide first place with Teammate now dropping to 3 losses and Gale Force at 2 and Tempo Storm at 1. If Gale Force beats Tempo Storm, they will have the head-to-head tiebreaker because they're 2-0 against the match record. And so they will move in that first-place position. But we'll talk about that. As for Naventic No Tomorrow, we did see a better No Tomorrow this time around. Naventic didn't look as clean in this series. What are your thoughts there?
Naventic kind of looked like they've looked all through Phase 1, Part 1, right? So the Naventic we saw on Friday, I feel like was an aberration. How we got that situation, I'm not sure, right? Whether it was the other team causing the problem and just not playing as well, or whether it was Naventic just like the stars were aligned and all of Naventic was on the same page for the first time in, 3 months, 4 months?
Something like that, yeah.
Right. So I don't know what the real challenge was there. I think No Tomorrow was on point in their game. And that CC train, they were executing that reliably that entire match. They almost need to stay with that because that seemed to work really, really well for them.
It did. And the meta is still in flux. Maybe we see something of a return of burst meta. I don't know. It's right now it seems like macro heavy meta seems to be where a lot of the teams are going. But with that, looking now at the World ELO ranking. So for those who don't know, I have been running an ELO ranking, so just a quick spiel on the methodology. Every game since BlizzCon between professional teams I have recorded, up including BlizzCon. So that's BlizzCon, that's the Gold Cup World Championship, as well as the qualifiers. That's HGC and the HGC qualifiers. That's the clashes, and then a few Pro-Am tournaments in the interim. Right now, not surprising, MVP Black at the top of the world after beating L5 at the Eastern Clash, but I mean, they're neck and neck at the top, and it's not even close to third place. I think it pretty much stands that MVP Black and L5 really just are far and away seemingly better than the rest of the world right now. You know, MVP Black can get upset. They did get upset by Fnatic at the last Global, but, you know, this is the top 8. I mean, do you see anything interesting here?
I think I just want to touch on MVP Black L5. I think those two can interchange kind of without a second thought. I think it's interesting the number of NA teams we see there.
Which is none.
Exactly.
Four European teams, though.
I was surprised at how many European teams, and I was surprised that Misfits was as low. Well, now Team Liquid was as low as they were.
So they were actually up at 4th, and what happened was they were at 4th or 5th. But the way my model is set up, it's per game, and so because they went 2-3 against weaker teams, they dropped. And that may seem unfair, but they won their series. They shouldn't drop. But my reasoning for that is if MVP Black went to a Game 5 against B Genius, they should not be so far above the rest of the world as they are.
Right.
And so because Team Liquid won 3-2, but 3-2 against below average European teams, you know, their rating is going to decline. They're still above Team Expert, and I would certainly favor them in a match against Team Expert. I think they'll get it together. I'm not really sure. I didn't get a chance to really watch their series, so I can't really say too much about it. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say I actually agree with the methodology for starters. I think you have to take into account the actual match win, not the set win, right? And so I actually agree with the model. And they looked a lot better this week, this past week that we just had, but they seem a little off too. I think what we're going to see, or what we have seen this past week, was just a lot of teams getting back into the flow of HGC. And I think this weekend's performances will really give us a better feel for how all of these teams are going to shake out going into the next couple weeks.
Yeah, I agree. So with that, let's see where the NA teams are. Now, there are none in the top 8, but you will see that Gale Force and Tempo Storm just at 9 and 10. Tempo Storm actually rocketed up the rankings. Tempo Storm's always been hard with the model, because I do think that they should probably be the highest power rated NA team. But the problem is, because I have to rate global games higher, so that way the ratings change. You know, if NA does bad at globals, their overall region needs to go downward. But because Tempo Storm has been the representative at all the globals, and NA has done bad, ergo Tempo Storm has done bad at globals. And that's reduced their rating rather significantly, but finally it's kind of getting to where I think it's stabilized a bit. So we do have Gale Force ahead of them right now. I wouldn't be too surprised if this pattern of Gale Force and Tempo Storm being up near the top holds the rest of the way. But actually, Team Freedom down at the bottom, I'm not sure why my model hates them so much. They've consistently been at the bottom of the ratings, and I've never really been able to figure out exactly why it happens. I have some suspicions that they tend to lose to teams. When they do lose, they tend to lose to teams who are at their lowest rating, and then they turn their season around based off that. But with that, you know, Team 8 now below B-Step. B-Step's still up there. I expect them to drop. My model's also really like Naventic for a while. So what are your thoughts looking at this?
I'm surprised Naventic is as high as they are right now.
I thought it was a bug, but I mean, I haven't been able to track it down. So every other region seems to be working out well. I think it's just NA is so chaotic. NA is the only team who is the only league where the last place team has a match win, where, you know, the bottom teams have 2 wins. To put it in perspective, the other two, when we get to the Crucible percentages, the other two leagues, like the bottom two spots are 90+%. And in NA, it's like 70, 70, and 50 for the bottom three. So it's much more chaotic, which I think is why we have some of the weirdness in the ratings that we do.
Right. The other thing that surprised me was B-Step and Teammate. I get where they are ranking wise, and I think it probably makes sense. But I'm not sure they're going to continue to drop. I think both of those teams will maybe not rise, but I think stay static, right? Because until you get a global, it's going to be hard to see them do a big jump. And if they don't go to a global, then how do they get that jump? And they have to be GFE. It gets like it's mathy, right?
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say I would expect Teammate to be relatively stable because I think they will beat the teams below them. I do expect B-Step to drop unless we see a dramatic performance change, because they looked the worst that they've looked, and they looked really bad early on in HGC Part 1. They got it back. They salvaged a decent, they salvaged a 4-3 at the split, but they looked worse this week than they did in week 1. And I don't know if that holds, but
I think that may be just I still stand by that's what happened this week. I mean, if you look at their players, they have a number of players that I think can turn it around. I think they I think this week's a wake-up call. We'll see what happens. If they do bad this week, I will completely revise my opinion, but I think they're going to turn it around.
Yeah. At least I'm the one intellectually consistent. When we get to the power rankings, I'll have them in 8th. Anyway, we both have them in 8th. So with that, jumping into the standings now. These are the current standings. Obviously, because we just ended week 1, 4 of the teams have played twice, 4 of them have played once, so it throws off the standings a little bit. Right now, Team Freedom above Naventic and No Tomorrow, primarily just because they haven't played as many games. But we now see Teammate dropping down to 3rd place, making this a 2-horse race between Gale Force and Tempo Storm. And actually, when you look at like tiebreaker scenarios, because Gale Force has beat Tempo Storm, if they trade and somehow Tempo Storm loses, they're both at 5 3-0s. So getting those 3-0s is actually important for the sake of the tiebreaker, potentially. But, standings shaking out. B-Step did lose that game. They're now tied with Superstars, but ahead of them by virtue of the head-to-head. Definitely seeing, though, that striation in NA. We have the top 3, we have the middle 2, and we have the bottom 3. I mean, I guess, would you agree with that, or?
Yeah, no, I definitely agree with that. I think you can see some movements within the sections. I as much as I think B-Step can turn it around, they're not going to break top 3. I just don't think they're going to drop down into the bottom 3. But we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. So with that, now let's go ahead and look ahead. Go ahead and look ahead to what would happen if the season ended today. So for those who aren't familiar with the rules for the Brawl, the number 1 team in each region is going to get an automatic bid to the Summer Brawl. So the Summer Brawl is going to be a summer truly global event. So unlike the semi-global event we saw with the Clashes, this is going to have teams from all 4 major regions and the 4 minor regions. If that ended today, Tempo Storm would get the 1 seed. They would be going to the Summer Brawl, and I need to fix their... oops, I made a mistake. I didn't fix the counters to say what their per-game win is. Oh well. If Phase 1 ended today, Naventic and No Tomorrow would head to the Crucible. So they would be fighting for their paycheck at this point. The other teams would go to a step-ladder playoff. So this playoff is step-ladder in the sense that it's not going to be like, 2 plays 6 and 3 plays 5 or 8. It's 5 and 6 will play. The winner will play 4. The winner will play 3. And the winner will play 2. So if this happened, Gale Force would only need to win 1 best of 5 to go to Globals. Team 8 would need to win 2. Superstars and Team Freedom would both need to win 4. So this is a model that I really like. It does give value to finishing well in your division while still creating the opportunity for a team to play their way in to that top 2 slot. It keeps the season somewhat interesting because you are playing for seeding not just at the top, but in the interim as well. So do you have any thoughts here?
I completely agree. I love this system.
Who would you take winning this playoff?
See, that's a struggle. If it happened today, GFE.
Yeah.
Like, just based on last week, GFE 100%. I think this weekend is going to be very telling for me around Team 8. I think the playoff here comes down to Team 8 or GFE and who's in the best shape at the time of the playoff. But what I really like about this is everybody has a chance. Superstars could do something magical and like all of a sudden have the best, playoff of their careers and end up in that spot. They get destroyed at Worlds, but they could end up in that spot.
In fairness, isn't every NA team going to get destroyed at Worlds? Now, the one kind of downside of this, and it's nothing new because it's always been two teams from every region, but God, to think one of the big three in Europe is not going to be at Globals. It's
disappointing, isn't it?
I mean, I know there's no way around it, and it's, every region's going to get 2. But if you look at South Korea, you're like, okay, Tempest is good, but MVB Black and L5 are just on another level right now. You look at China, and it's going to be E-Star, and whoever E-Star brings with them, it's probably going to be either Super Perfect Team or X Team. I think it's Super Perfect Team has the better odds right now. NA, probably Tempo Storm and Gale Force, outside shot at Team 8. Europe, though, it could honestly be any of the 3, and I would say that that's the most up for grabs region. So, with that, moving back to NA, here are the first place odds. So if you don't know, I can do Monte Carlo simulations with these ELO ratings. That's why I calculated them. To determine what the odds of each team. Now, despite the fact that Gale Force is actually favored face-up against Tempo Storm, the thing with Gale Force is they have to play another game, so that's another chance to lose. And if they lose to Tempo Storm, they absolutely won't get first place, almost certainly. Right. If Gale Force beats Tempo Storm but loses to anyone else, Tempo Storm gets first place. Most likely, because Tempo Storm would be at 2 losses, Gale Force would be at 3. Still mathematically alive are B-Step Superstars and Team Freedom. I should note that there were a lot of zeros before that 1 for Team Freedom. But it's mathematically possible, so you're saying there's a chance. But at this point, Naventic and No Tomorrow obviously cannot win first place. Mathematically impossible. Any thoughts here? I mean,
so I like the number. I'm really curious now. The number of zeros in front of Team Freedom before that 1.
There are. Okay, I will tell you. There was 1 simulation in 10,000 when I negated ELO. So if I just decided every game by a coin flip, this is the most generous I can be to Team Freedom. And in those 10,000 simulations, Team Freedom finished first 1 time. So you're saying there's a chance.
It's an
Tempo Storm has to lose every game. Gale Force has to beat Tempo Storm and lose every other game. I can't remember what else has to happen. I tried to work it out. I have a PhD, and even I didn't have the skills to figure out the scenario. So it's,
But there's a chance.
Apparently it's possible. That's all I can say.
I think, I mean, look, realistically, you're looking at the percentage. It comes down to, like you said earlier, Week 9, GFE and Tempo Storm. If GFE can win all the way out, including Week 9, they're probably going to end up in first place.
Yeah. And with Team 8, basically what they have to hope for, Gale Force has to beat Tempo Storm. Because Tempo Storm beat Team 8 twice, and so with the way the tiebreaker works, they need a triangle where it's Tempo Storm, Gale Force, and Team 8, because then every team is like 2 and 2 against each other, like overall. Okay. So they need Tempo Storm to lose to Gale Force. Then they need Gale Force to lose to someone else, and they need Tempo Storm to lose to someone else. And then they need to have the most 3-0s, which right now they're 1 behind. Team 8 has 4, Gale Force and Tempo Storm have 5.
I mean, so mathematically there's a chance, but realistically that scenario is probably not happening.
I'm just explaiing that that amount of insanity is what it takes to get to 0.2%. So less than 0.01, less than or 0.1, like none of those are going to happen. Crucible odds. This one's actually a lot more interesting. So first, Tempo Storm is safe. They are officially in HGC Phase 2. So that's the good news. Team Freedom and No Tomorrow currently on the hot seat, with Naventic actually favored to go to the Crucible ever so slightly. They're at 50.2%. So 3 teams favored to go to the Crucible. Obviously, only 2 of them are. Realistically, it's going to be 2 of those 3, unless Superstars just absolutely melts down in a way that, I don't think they will. And even then, they would need, No Tomorrow and Naventic to do really well down the stretch.
Right.
So it's between these 3. Which 2 do you... I guess make it easier. Which one do you think will escape the Crucible?
I would give the best chance of escaping the Crucible, as of where we are right now, to No Tomorrow.
I think I agree with that.
Yeah.
The one... So you have to also keep in mind that head-to-head is the top tiebreaker. So if you look at head-to-head, Team Freedom lost to No Tomorrow. No Tomorrow and Naventic are 1-1 against each other, so that's a wash. Naventic lost to Team Freedom. So that Naventic Team Freedom series is actually going to matter quite a bit. If Team Freedom beats Naventic and beats No Tomorrow, they would actually be able to win tiebreakers and get out. If No Tomorrow beats Team Freedom, they should be able to escape. That's going to be one they need. It's really going to come down, I think, to tiebreakers. As well as just those 2 series yet to be played. Team Freedom and Team Freedom and Naventic and No Tomorrow and Team Freedom.
So, I don't know if you've been watching any of the Open Division games, but
I have not.
Okay. I fear for whoever comes into the Crucible.
Mm-hmm. So the top 2 teams, I know there's LFM, right?
Yep.
LFM.
Yep,
and is UTA still second, or did they drop the third?
UTA is third right now, only because
behind
they skipped
Even
2
and
weeks.
Death, right?
No, it's imported support now.
Imported support, that's right. Imported support.
Yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, if I understand right, there's one more cup, and then they do a playoff, and it's the top 2 teams in that playoff.
Yes.
It's not just the top 2 in rating. There is a playoff at the end. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. I think that I would be more nervous if I were a European team on the Crucible than if I were a North American team. I think Team Zealot in Europe has just been incredibly powerful.
Yes.
In fact, MAA, who's second in the European Open Cups, actually beat B Genius in a Pro-Am tournament. That does not bode well for B Genius. This is how I wrote it on my write-up. More than 99.9% chance of going to the Crucible. It was 2 in 10,000. That's how many times they escaped the Crucible. 2 in 10,000. So basically 100%. But only one team safe. But that said, if Gale Force and Team 8 just win a series, they're safe at this point. And pretty much the same with B-Step and Team Superstars. It's very improbable that they'll go. So here are the Power Poll rankings. Put the Power Poll up on Reddit. So it's Gale Force actually moved up to the number 1 slot, but it's incredibly close between first and second. They actually each had the same percentage of first place votes, but a couple people put Tempo Storm at third. I'm not sure why. I don't know what games they were watching this weekend. Maybe they were watching Mass Effect Andromeda, and that they're just disoriented. They don't know what a human being looks like anymore. It's just throwing off their perception. Let me do my Mass Effect Andromeda impression. Anyway, you couldn't see that. I was miming like I was still speaking, even though I was done talking. I'm so funny and original. Naventic finished 8th. So basically, they just switched places. No one has high opinions of No Tomorrow or Naventic. I still think Team Freedom. I'm surprised to see so many people still putting them in 4th and 5th place. I know that they beat Gale Force. I know that they hung with Tempo Storm, but they've not shown, I think, that they're such a better team than No Tomorrow that they're so consistently ahead of them in the ratings. And in fact, No Tomorrow beat Team Freedom in the first leg. But What are your Superstars finally moves up into the top four? It's actually their first time in the top four. Any thoughts here?
So I actually like a lot of these ratings. I think what you get out of these polls is you definitely get the people who are trying to rate what they feel based on the games they watched, right? But then you also get the players that are just rating their team, right? That's why you see
Right.
a lot of Tempo Storms in third.
I mean, I get that to some extent, but most of the polls were pretty consistent. I didn't see, for example, like a bunch of people voting Niantic number one just because they were fans.
That's true. That's true.
I mean, there weren't that many polls. You know, this is part of why I'm moving my posts off of posting directly on Reddit. I'm not ready to announce that news yet, but I am going to be putting my posts on a website where they're more permanent, they're less subject, so hopefully that'll get more power poll votes in.
And it'll
But
be
I didn't
interesting to
too
see
much
what
of this.
happens with that, right? If you really end up with more votes and how the rankings shift around.
Yeah, I think they've been pretty reliable. I've been trusting the people voting. The people who have been voting, I've not seen enough anomalies. The only time I even saw anomalies was the first time I did it, which was when Chew8 was still on Team 8, and people either voted them like about 12%, like they had something like 10% of first place votes and something like 60% of last place votes, and they averaged out to 7th place, which, by the way, I got a mention from Just Sting for that. It's like, oh, we got picked 7th place in the first poll. Which is why I think they lost their first 2 games, because they were first place, so that's my fault. Sorry, teammate fans. But yeah, so let's look at our polls where we disagree, and we actually... The only thing we switch is Team 8 and Gale Force. I have Gale Force above Team 8. You are wrong. But we both put B-Step at 8th. And I think this is going to be more philosophical, like why we didn't agree with the rest of the pollers, is that I think both of us have the same wavelength, which is the power ranking is how good were you last week.
Yeah.
I don't know why that has you putting Team 8 in 2nd place, but... It definitely has us both putting B-Step in 8th place. They look like the worst team.
I can answer the Team 8 thing. So the Team 8 thing actually comes from one simple thing for me, and that is they lost their games, but they played in a way, I don't want to call it more consistent, but they played in a way that was actually something they needed to do differently in the game, right? So yes, it cost them games, but you could see a stylistic change to their play, and I feel like that bodes well for them going forward. So it was on how they performed last week, but my power ranking didn't necessarily represent where they actually finished match wise. More, they turned a corner that I think they needed to turn, and after another week of working on it, I think it'll work out well for them this week.
Okay, so I mean, like, so long term, I guess. Let's go out on a limb and assume that Gale Force and Team 8 will still be in HGC come Phase 2. I know. I'm asking you to make such an unrealistic assumption. How can you imagine such a thing? Do you think in Phase 2 that Team 8 is going to outperform Gale Force, assuming they keep the same players? I think by rule they can make one sub.
Right.
I don't necessarily expect that to happen in either case. Well, I could see it happening with Team 8. But
I think it might.
I don't want to talk about that until like later on in this season, because I don't want to like call out people and
I definitely don't think GFE will change roster. I think what we'll see in part 2 or phase 2 is we'll see the top 3 in NA look more like the top 3 in other regions, where it's going to be Tempo Storm, Team 8, GFE, if Team 8 can stay the way they are. I don't think either of them is going to consistently challenge Tempo Storm in NA games.
Okay.
I think Tempo Storm's biggest undoing is still going to be global. I hope it isn't, and I want to see NA do well at a global, but I think that'll be interesting. So I think the top 3 will be those 3 teams. I think they might go back and forth a little bit, just depending on what is going on and who they're playing and that type of thing.
All right, so with that, we're going to hop over and start talking about superlatives. So to that end, we both picked just some superlatives. We agreed on some, we disagreed on others. As far as Team of the Week, I'm going to go ahead and just jump in and say, so my best Team of the Week was indeed Tempo Storm. It was tough. I wanted to go for Gale Force. I am a Gale Force fan. I really like Gale Force, and that was the most fun series for me to watch.
Yes.
But Tempo just looked a bit more consistent in Game 1, and they looked far more dominant in Game 2 and 3. Whereas Gale Force, even though they won the game by out-macroing, it almost felt like if they had to take a team fight, it was really a scary moment for them. And so because of that, I just got to give the edge of Team of the Week over to Tempo Storm.
I would agree. I think Tempo Storm looked dominant the entire time. GFE was clearly winning, but they were winning not... Like you said, there were no real team fights there, right? They won, but there wasn't... We beat you through team fights. It was... We beat you because we macroed better than you did.
Yeah, and they just looked really strong in that series. So I guess then the next superlative we have to look at, let's just flip the coin and say, what is your most underperforming team of the week? So who do you have there? Or at least the worst team of the week, I should say.
The worst team of the week. I have to say, while I know B-Step played horribly, I think Team 8 played almost as bad.
Really? I don't think Team 8 played almost as bad as B-Step. I think a lot of their games, they did get outplayed, but they didn't play badly, is kind of the distinction I would draw. They were not prepared for what Gale Force did, and I don't know if any team would be. When Gale Force has a week to just focus on only one team, and they take it seriously, cough cough Team Freedom, then they do extremely well. I mean, they came out, what did they do in the first week against the Ventic? They didn't beat them, they embarrassed them. What did they do in week 4 against Tempo Storm? They didn't beat them, they embarrassed them.
Yeah.
By comparison, Team 8 actually hung in there. So I definitely see where you're going at with Team 8, where losing 0-6 is not what they want to have. I don't know if I agree that it makes them the worst team of the week in this case.
Well, and see, what I would put forward is I feel like that's a similar position that B-Step was in, but B-Step mechanically played much worse than Team 8.
Right, which is why I have them as the worst team of the week.
Right.
So my worst team of the week...
I may agree now with you.
Yeah, I think when it comes down to it... Oops, I didn't mean to show... I didn't want... K1 Pro, it's your fault. No, that was unintentional. I meant to just go to some random point in the game, so footage plays while we talk. Because professionalism or something. Yeah, I mean... Look, I'm coming across as something of a B-Step hater, and I'm not. I was really impressed with how they finished the first phase, and I thought that they could challenge, not necessarily win, but they could kind of be the team, what Team Expert is in Europe, which is just hanging below those three and certainly giving them scares. And what I saw was like be genius in HCC Europe, which is to say completely outplayed, completely outmaneuvered, just never looked in a good position in any of the 3 games they played. Now, they only had one series, but I struggle to find a place where I'm like, okay, I like their positioning right here.
No, they definitely got outplayed a lot. There were a couple of things that I saw, and I wish I'd written them down at the time, and I'll make sure that this weekend I write those down so I can point them out and have those for you. Where they didn't end up winning the game, but they did something I was like, these are the things they needed to focus on during the first part of this season. So they're learning from those mistakes. It's just, are they learning fast enough to survive long enough to be a competitive team?
All right. So with that, let's take the focus off the team and put the focus on the player. I think we both agreed on the best player of the week. Although, granted, it was at the behest of some pretty hardcore advertising by Dread while he was casting the games. But June just played out of his mind. He really did. I mean, he was phenomenal this weekend. And Akaface played great support. So the only thing I think that changes it for me is, again, I thought Tempo Storm just looked overall more dominant. I still think Akaface, and June are basically on equal footing as far as supports go. But the plays that June made, he had more opportunities to make these kind of god tier plays. You have twice where, or not twice. You have in this game on Dragonshire, which is live now. Later on, he manages to ice block out a gust, and then he cleanses a teammate out of the ice block once the gust passes. And then in Game 3, of course, there's the Gust Dream, or Game 2, there's the Gust Dream. So he just played extremely well. Tempest Storm looked in control the whole time. And I was just really, really impressed with June.
The Ice Block Gust was actually like third place for my play of the game, because it was like the timing on it was perfect. He blocked the Gust, he immediately cleansed.
Mm-hmm.
And then they turned that fight around.
Let me go ahead and put that highlight up just so people can see what we're talking about here. So right now you're going to see Jason do the Fly Gust, but right there, Ice Block to prevent getting blown in, so Mouth is still at a safe distance. And then with the Cleanse Twilight Dream, I mean, he won his team the fight. Ice Block, Cleanse, Twilight Dream. Fight's over, Tempest Storm wins the game. It was really good. And then, of course, obviously we had the Gusty Dream, but I think we're going to be pulling that one up in a second, so I'll save it. I guess the next place to go, then, is Play of the Week. So let's start with yours. I believe I called it correctly, that is your Play of the Week. So I call this one the Gusty Dream. I need to come up with a better name.
Like Gusty Dream.
You like Gusty Dream? All right, well, here we are, Game of the Week. We are going to see quite a big talent tile in the bottom, but it's going to go away. I love how Cawthon Luck just sees this and attacks. Doesn't even hesitate. Gust into the Twilight Dream. Void Prism going to isolate out the two people low on health. It's going to secure the kill on Varian. And then Tiger JK trying to do everything he can. He's just going to get blown up. Not able to outtrade Cawthon. But it was all procced off by Cawthon Luck just saying, I see it, I'm going. I would love to hear what their comms were at that time. That's one of the reasons that Falstads do take Epic Mount at 20, just because it allows you to engage with a Gust so quickly, because you just take off, like there's not the wind-up time. It's not just the reduced cooldown, it's that you can see something and just attack it. So it was, really good play, and all of Tempest Storm really on the same page in that fight. So that was your Play of the Week. Mine, we're going to have to go all the way back to Friday, and it's a team fight that Gale Force loses, but oh, do they get something out of it. Here we are with Gale Force losing their keep, Syndragosa trying to turn around, get the kill on Glaurung on the Sonya, but the Twilight Dream actually gets Tyrael killed there. But look at the core, and Team 8 just trying to retreat. They realize that their core is in trouble. But Equinox with the Great Root, with the slows on Arthas, just not letting anyone get to B. Eventually, Varian manages to slip away and B, and Sonya has to run back the old-fashioned way. But they bought so much time. I mean, let me just, look at how much time catapults are on their core, in terms of real seconds. So here we're at about 11:30, and then by the time Sonya actually gets to the catapults to kill them, we're all the way at about 11. Well, here we are, 11:55, and Sonya's still not there. So it's about 30 seconds where catapults are just focusing the core. I mean, that's, the minions got a few of them, but it's a lot of time to just stall that out. So I was really impressed with Gale Force. Just the wherewithal to realize, yes, we lost the team fight. Yes, if we keep chasing, they could turn around and kill us all. But if they do that, we win the game. And so really, really just good global awareness. And I think that's the one thing that, when I go back to Gale Force last year, especially in international play, one of the things that was just unfortunately consistent was someone would get picked off. It was the Falstad would get picked off, the Sonya would get picked off. Those are two heroes they used a lot in the side lanes. The Tassadar got picked off once or twice even. And the global awareness that we saw, I think that's part of why I'm so high on Gale Force right now, is that they fixed what I thought was the glaring weakness, which was their real inconsistency in the macro game. They still need to improve a bit more in team fighting, but I have high hopes for them.
I would agree.
Yeah.
And I've always been a fan of GFE, so I hope they can work it out and continue to work it out.
So for the sake of time, we've already talked quite a bit about teammates struggling, so we're going to skip that discussion. We are going to jump into discussion time now. Gale Force and Tempo Storm, obviously they've separated from the field in terms of standings. My question is, have they separated so much from the field in terms of ability? And even if let's go ahead and be generous and let's throw teammate into the mix. Do you think anyone outside the top 3 is going to beat that top 3? Or at least anyone outside the top 2 going to beat the top 2? Because obviously teammate's not going to beat the top 2 at this point.
Right. Take a whole series off? No. Surprise them and take a match off? Yes, there's a chance.
Okay. Well, do you mean so you think they'll win just to clarify, you think they'll win an individual map, but not
an individual map.
I mean,
yes,
I wouldn't be surprised to see them
possible.
Win an individual map. I mean, there are maps that Gale Force kind of notably play somewhat weak on. One, I will note that I think Gale Force coming up here has actually a pretty strong advantage this week, because I think Teammate or Superstars tries to do a lot of things Gale Force does. Gale Force just does them better. But yeah, we'll talk more about that game in a bit. I don't know, because NA is such a clusterfuck.
Right.
Like, It's the only league where there isn't a clear worst team. Although, granted, part of that is because everyone's kind of equally bad at times.
Right.
But it's the only league where there's 3 teams that are, higher than like 2% chance of going to the Crucible. But also, it only has 2 teams that are competitive for first place, according to simulations. And obviously, with Teammate losing, it'll probably hold true. It's just my question goes back to, do I think they stay that way? I think Michael Udall has significantly improved as a captain. I still think Gale Force is never going to, get over the decision to remove Fury from the team. And I say that again, being a fan, but just that was a mistake in hindsight.
Yes, I 100% agree with that.
And Michael Udall even agrees with that in the interviews.
Yeah.
And that was actually part of why I was really impressed, was in the interviews. He's like, look, this was my decision. So he owned it, and he admitted that it didn't work out. And, then he just gave nothing but praise to Fury. So I think the maturity of Michael Udall, the maturing we've seen just in the last year, because let's keep in mind, he's basically been in the pros for about a year now. A little bit more than a year. Because I remember when he was still on Heroes of the Dorm for Arizona State. And then, Gale Force was just this amateur team. I mean, technically it was an organization, but it was, Gale Force was nothing. And then they add Mike Udall, they add Akaface, and they add Rafflecopter. And they won one of the summer regionals. So
yeah.
But with that, I guess to sum it up, I do think Tempo Storm and Gale Force are certainly above the field for the rest of this leg. It really depends on sub changes. I think, and I say this, I think Prismat is a very good player. I still think Teammate will replace him, just because he was a late addition, and I wouldn't necessarily be too surprised to see Teammate try to get one of the old team name change guys.
Yes, I could see that, and I would not be surprised to see that.
I don't know if that would necessarily improve their team, but I just think because of that factor, I'm not willing to say whether or not those 2 will stay above Teammate. I do think those 3 will stay above the rest of the field unless Naventic does something drastic, and I think you and I both know what drastic means, and it means finding a support player.
Well, and to do that, right, both brothers have to leave, which means they have to drop out. So,
well, that's what I don't see that as particularly likely, and I know it's easy to hate on Kenma. I know it's fashionable to do so, and I'm not doing it. I just, at least in Phase 1, he was a lot of the reason they struggled, although B-Kid didn't play great as well.
Right.
I think what is most likely to happen is they will replace someone that I don't know. I don't want to speculate too much. I think they can make one sub, and I wouldn't be surprised to see Naventic use it. I wouldn't be surprised to see Teammate use it. I would be surprised if Team Freedom or Superstars or even B-Step used it. Maybe not too
I
surprised in B-Step, but
honestly, I think so. Niantic is my, let's call it my guilty pick to go into Crucible and lose. And if they do so and end up in open division, we could see the team get completely changed at that point. Because
right.
at that point, you have no points in open division. You have to earn your way back into the playoffs, back through the next Crucible, or qualify post BlizzCon. So you have the time to change your roster at that point.
Right. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens. It's you know it's probably way too much speculation. We've beaten this dead horse. B-Step. Any idea what went wrong? Like, I mean, like specifically why they played so bad. I mean, I know you said they woke up on the wrong side of the bed, but there has to be some kind of cause for that level of play.
So, I've dug through every tweet revolving around any of the B-Step guys over the past 3 weeks, just to see if like something was said and triggered some kind of I don't know, anything, right? Drama, whatever the case.
I mean, No Tomorrow did it, and they actually looked pretty good, so maybe drama works. I don't know.
Right? I mean, it can work, but I couldn't find anything that was like, this is the reason B-Step struggled. Other than, you know, at one point, somebody said they were trying some new scrim partners, and I can't remember which tweet. I'd have to go dig it up again. But I just can't believe that caused them to play as bad as they did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I feel like they almost said, you know what we're gonna do, and this is why I'm higher on them than I probably should be at this point, because mathematically, you're dead on the money. I feel like they decided stylistically, we're going to play a different game now. We're going to draft a certain way, and we're going to try and execute a certain way. And while that may work in the long run, in the short run, it had very, very bad performance written all over it.
All right, so we're going to come to this question. This is a question I'm going to ask from now until the end of Week 10 when we're heading into the Crucible, which is,
okay,
given the teams we're seeing now and given open division, do you think an NA team gets replaced? And if so, who? And keep your answer to yes or no and the name of a team. And then I'll elaborate further.
Yes. Honestly,
and you can say two teams, obviously.
Right. But I'm trying to remember where they were placement wise, so I want to make sure I get the right teams, and
Team Freedom is 2-6. Niantic and No Tomorrow are 2-7.
Okay, so my gut is Freedom and Niantic are on the chopping block.
So you think they'll both go to the Crucible and they'll both lose?
I definitely believe one of them will lose. I think there's a chance for both of them, only because I've seen the NA ones.
Which one? We're applying the pressure here.
Pick one right now. If I'm picking one right now, today, Team Freedom.
I don't know how good Team Freedom's going to be in this leg. They looked pretty good against Superstars. I do think Superstars is a good enough team that if you could beat them, you'll probably beat whoever is in the open division. I'm gonna go with yes, and I'm gonna go with Niantic. I think it will be an upset when it happens. I think it'll be very surprising. I will be surprised when it happens, but I also think it will happen. That makes no fucking sense, does it?
No, it really does, though. It does, if you think about it, right? A pro team losing to an amateur team. That's a surprise, no matter what.
I just think Niantic, what is the amateur team going to have to do to beat the pro team? They're going to have to go at the Achilles tendon with a knife. They're going to have to cut it, and they're going to have to watch the person struggle until they bleed to death. And one team in HGC has one glaringly obvious weakness, which is you can frustrate them very easily, and they will play worse when they're frustrated. And Niantic just fits that bill. I think while I think Niantic, if they played Team Freedom and No Tomorrow 100 times, I think they would win the majority of both series. It's only going to take 3 games to beat Niantic and get into HGC. And I think because you're going to you're going to commit so many resources to that game, and because you're going to practice harder, and I think you will end up practicing hard in Eventic, I think it's possible. Unless I see change, and that's now if Neventic comes out like they did against B Step, I don't think they'll lose. If they come out like they did against No Tomorrow, I think they will.
Let me ask you a different question that plays
Okay.
into that. If you know 1 to 3 of the top Open Division teams are regularly scrimming pro teams, does that change your opinion?
I mean, it would probably reinforce my belief that Neventic lose. I still think. I mean, I don't follow scrim results, and I'm not
Right.
really privy to those details. I'm not like pros. Yeah, I'm a pleb lord gold. Like I can write code. I can't play HOTS, so it's not like I have a lot of knowledge here. But I mean, I could see Team Freedom losing. I could see No Tomorrow losing. I don't know. I think Team Freedom and No Tomorrow can kick it in. Have shown that they can kick it into gear when they absolutely need to.
Right.
I mean, Team Freedom's also been able to play just really bad. So that would come down to more randomness. I think you can force your way into beating Neventic in a way that I don't know if you would have to, I think, beat No Tomorrow and Team Freedom clean, versus I think Neventic you could beat with just being a little bit off game.
You can definitely tilt Neventic quickly.
Yeah.
I 100%
I mean,
agree.
I could be wrong here. Something tells me that one team will lose, and if I had to pick one, it would be Neventic. I don't think it will be two, but that's also with me not watching Open Division, so I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. With that, here's the other question I'm going to ask between now and the Eastern Clash. Does a North American team win a match, not a game, a match, against a international competitor from a major region?
A match like the full
A
set
best of five.
three.
Well,
Or
actually,
five.
wait, because it's two. It's so let's say in the round robin phase they have to 2-0 for that to be a win. Because the round robin, I don't know if you know how Brawl is structured.
Yeah.
So they have to 2-0 to consider it a win. Otherwise, it's a push. In the playoff, they would have to just clean beat. So win a best of 5.
Okay, so major region, EU, Korea, China, right?
Yes, EU, Korea, and China. I think it will happen if the 2 seed from North America is in the region with the 2 seed from China.
Yes.
But I'm not sure exactly how they're seeding it. If it ends up that the 1 seed from China is in the division with the 2 seed from North America, I think you lose that up. Well, no, because then you'd have the 1 seed from North America
Against the 2 seed from China, which I think
the 2 seed from China is the most likely chance.
Yes.
I still don't think it will happen. I'm actually going to say I don't think it will happen.
I don't know if it's possible.
Yeah.
I think you're right. The only chance an NA team has there is
It's like
if
a
they
1
play the 2
against the
seed.
2 in China, yeah.
Right. But other than that, no, I
they're
don't
sure
think
as
it's
shit
possible.
not going to beat the 2 seed from Korea. Let's just
And
be
they're not
realistic
beating-
about that.
They won't
or
beat
Europe,
the
probably,
EU
yeah.
teams, right? So it's the number 2 from China or bust.
All right. Well, with that, we've talked about the future. The far future. Let's talk a little bit about the more immediate future. Specifically, tomorrow night, we are going to see, and I'm going to pull it up here, Superstars versus Gale Force. I have Gale Force winning 3-0. You have Gale Force winning 3-1. And Team Freedom B-Step. I have Team Freedom winning 3-2. You have B-Step winning 3-2. So I think we both agree Gale Force is going to win the same series. The reason I don't think Superstars will take a map off Gale Force is, again, it just comes down, I think Gale Force is just what Superstars would be if Superstars were a lot better.
I agree with that, but I think Superstars could surprise us in a best of 3 and win one map, and that's why I think it'll end up being 3-1 or a best of 5. Yeah.
I mean, it was a 3-0 last time, and it wasn't close. I think it's just a matchup problem. I think Superstars would be more likely to beat Tempo Storm than they would be to beat Gale Force. I think it's just a matchup thing.
That's interesting. You may be right there.
Just because Gale Force really does what Superstars does and just does it better. Team Freedom B-Step, intriguing certainly. Can B-Step get it back? Team Freedom obviously needs a win to just stay away from the Crucible. I was so underwhelmed with B-Step that I do think they're going to lose this one. Not that I was impressed with Team Freedom, but they did show some signs of life. They looked better than B-Step anyway. So that's my thought. Any thoughts on that game?
This one was tough for me only because I think B-Step did what they needed to incorrectly, and that's why they lost. I think this is the telling week for me. If B-Step does well here, I feel like my faith in them being able to turn it around and now that stylistic change working for them will come to fruition. If B-Step plays like they did this week, I think Team Freedom wins. But I'm like a firm believer in the stylistic change that they made this week can pay off, or that they made last week can pay off this week.
My mouse is on the screen, and for some reason I'm like spinning around the beat. All right. No, I mean I can kind of see that. I don't know where that series is going to go because it's two teams that have shown just significant inconsistency.
Right.
Saturday, no tomorrow. Last week had to face Tempo Storm. This week faces Gale Force. We both have it a 3-0. I would be really surprised to see no tomorrow take a map. Maybe if they can work that pick combo into a map where Gale Force wants the team fight. Even then, Gale Force, like, they could just not team fight. They've clearly shown that they can do that. So no tomorrow at least will know what's coming if Gale Force tries to go for that hyper macro strategy. Right. I think Team 8 just draft-wise really had no idea how to respond to it. And they kept they kept giving Falstad up because Tass is so strong right now that it's hard to just let him free, and Zarya is also really strong. The Shielders are just really strong. It'll be interesting to see when we get the patch that had the Tass nerf, how that works out, yeah.
But
then Team 8 B-Step. So you actually have this one somewhat close to 3-2. I have a 3-1 only. I wanted to go 3-0 here. I think B-Step can show that they can win a game here, but I mean, I go back to the first series of HGC was Team 8 B-Step, the very first series.
Yes,
and Team 8 came out and 3-0'd, and none of the games were close. And that was where we got the famous Glaurung Medivh plays. I'd like to see something similar, but I somehow think Team 8's going to lose a game here. You think they're going to lose too, so...
I think that's going to be a close series. But again, this is if B-Step's pivot actually works, right? Mm-hmm. If B-Step's pivot doesn't work, I think 3-1 or 3-0 is probably the result with Team 8 winning that. But I'm trying to keep faith that what they were trying to do this week is going to work out for them. Right. It very well may not, and we may be back here next week, and I'm saying, yeah, I was completely wrong. B-Step is absolutely number 8, and they're in danger now.
Yeah. All right, jumping into Sunday's games, Superstars Tempo Storm. I should note the rankings, by the way, are from the Power Rankings. They are not from the ELO ratings. So, Superstars, on the up and up. I guess I'm going to find out whether or not what I said is accurate, because I said I think Superstars would more likely beat Tempo Storm than Gale Force. But I still have this one being a 3-0. Superstars, I think they have... I mean, like I said, it comes down to matchups, and I think Superstars, because they do a lot of macro, kind of Stranger Things, like that stuff Gale Force and Tempo Storm can do. And so I would say Superstars would give a better series to Team 8 than they would... Like, even Team 8 in the first leg. You know, it could be that they end up making this contest. I really like Superstars, I should note. I like Srey. I think he's just a really good member of the community as well. But I don't know. I'm hesitant to say that they can win a game in either of these sets this week.
Yeah, no, they're going to struggle against Tempo Storm, but it'll be interesting to see if they're able to pick up a game or even the set.
Yeah. That takes us to Team Freedom to Ventic. This game is just huge as far as the Crucible. The winner of this game, I've already kind of pre-simulated out what happens. The winner of this game becomes a favorite to escape the Crucible. That is to say, they go under 50% chance. I know, right? They're not safe by any means, but they're a lot safer. We both have Team Freedom winning this. I have a 3-2 because I think we could see Naventic show up. But if Naventic gets tilted, I think a 3-1 is very probable. I don't see Team Freedom getting a 3-0. It just really kind of... But, I mean, if Team Freedom won this one 3-1, I would not be surprised. If they won it 3-0, I would probably be less surprised if Naventic won 3-0 than if Team Freedom won 3-0.
So here's the only reason I went 3-1 here. Mm-hmm. Team Freedom likes to chat on social media going into games.
Right.
That tilts Naventic.
Yeah.
And causes them not to play as well. So I think Team Freedom could take an edge there, just if Collusion and Dansky start like doing their thing.
Right.
The next thing you know, Naventic, Kenma and Zuna are just automatically, oh my god, they're talking trash, and they get into that mode where they can't play because they're so focused on the trash talk.
I mean, I guess though, like kind of going back, does that seem crazy that I think it's more likely, even though I'm picking Team Freedom, I think it's more likely Naventic would win 3-0 than Team Freedom win 3-0?
No, because I think Team Freedom is not capable of 3-0ing anybody in NA right now.
Well, I think Naventic is mechanically better if they bring those mechanics to bear correctly.
Yes.
But
I don't know that they can.
But with that, so that's next week. We'll see how wrong I am. I'm going to go with very. Well, I think several of the series are pretty safe, but we'll find out next week. Liquid, thank you for joining me. Thank you for helping me revive this show. And thank you to everyone for watching. You want to give any shout-outs to social media or podcasts or anything?
I mean, just follow me on Twitter, LiquidGG, LiquiudGG. I tweet everything that I'm doing there. And, in addition to this, I do another show Wednesday nights, the Nexus Trolls, on Twitch Live, too, where we talk a little bit about esports, not as much. And I actually had a great time. So thank you for, the tweet mentioning you wanted to do it and us being able to put this together.
It's something I was really happy with how this product turned out in the first half. And Flag, for anyone wondering, Flag, he just only had so much time in the day, and he actually has, a family, unlike certain bald people who look kind of like Louis C.K. And so it's, it was very amicable. Flag, if you're watching, absolutely thank you for getting this show off the ground. So with that, we're going to wind this down. I will have some news, so follow me on Twitter at DeathBySmiley, as well as just look on Reddit for my usual random posts. I know I haven't posted on Reddit this week, but I do have some big news coming down the pipeline. I look forward to sharing that to you when it's made public. So with that, I'm going to go ahead and thank everyone for watching, and we're going to take off.